How do two strangers end up looking like twins? The doppelgänger phenomenon, people who look strikingly alike despite no close family ties, is a surprising mix of genetics, probability, cultural perception, and environmental shaping. In this episode, we'll unpack the science of facial similarity, examine famous and curious cases of non-related lookalikes, explore how environment and life choices amplify or diminish resemblance, and finish with what this teaches us about identity, genetics, and perception. First, a short framing idea. Resemblance is not a single property you either have or don't. It's a multidimensional similarity of features, bone structure, facial proportions, hairline, skin tone, gestures, posture, and even expressions. Some of these features have strong genetic components, others are highly modifiable by diet, health, and behavior. This distinction is crucial. Our faces are not static blueprints, but dynamic canvases painted by both our genes and our lives. Our goal in this video is not to give a single cause, but to show how multiple factors converge. Let's begin with genetics and probability. Human faces are heritable. Twin studies show that many facial measurements and proportions have substantial heritability estimates. That means genes contribute a significant fraction of the variation for features such as facial width, nose shape, and eye spacing. Genome-wide association studies are starting to identify specific genetic variants linked to facial morphology. These studies, known as GWS, scan the entire genome of thousands of people, looking for tiny statistical links between a genetic marker and a facial trait. The key finding is that there's no single nose-shaped gene or eye-spacing gene. Instead, hundreds or even thousands of genes each contribute a minuscule amount, and each variant explains only a tiny slice of variation. It's a classic polygenic trait. Think of genetics as providing a palette of possibilities. Combinations of small effects across many genes produce the raw materials of facial structure. But here's the key statistical point. The genetic space that produces human faces is large, but finite, and random combinations can repeat. Imagine a cosmic lottery with a few thousand different types of tickets. Each person gets a unique combination of these tickets, which determines their facial features. While the number of possible combinations is astronomical, it's not infinite. With nearly 8 billion people drawing tickets, it's statistically inevitable that some people somewhere will draw remarkably similar hands. Independent genetic draws can sometimes yield similar results. That's probability doing what probability does. Given enough people, close matches will occur. This is one reason we see unrelated doppelgangers in different countries or continents. Now consider developmental biology. The way a face forms in the womb and through childhood involves gene activity, hormonal signals, and growth patterns. Small shifts in growth timing, called heterochrony, or tiny differences in how tissues expand can produce convergent shapes. For instance, one person's jaw might grow rapidly for a shorter period, while another's grows more slowly over a longer period. If the final dimensions end up being similar, their profiles will look alike, even if the genetic instructions and developmental timing that got them there were different. It's like two different recipes producing a very similar tasting cake. Two people with different genetic starting points might nonetheless experience similar developmental conditions yielding similar facial proportions. Next, environment, lifestyle, and epigenetics. Epigenetics is a fascinating layer on top of our DNA. It refers to chemical tags that attach to our genes, acting like dimmer switches that turn gene activity up or down without changing the genetic code itself. These epigenetic marks can be influenced by our environment, meaning factors like nutrition, chronic illness, exposure to sunlight, and smoking can reshape facial tissues over years. For example, strong lifetime sun exposure can alter skin texture and pigmentation, and smoking affects skin elasticity and wrinkle patterns. Even long-term diet plays a role. A diet rich in certain nutrients can support robust bone density, affecting the very scaffold of the face, while a poor diet can lead to subtle changes in facial structure over a lifetime. Dental health also influences jaw alignment and cheek contours. These non-genetic influences can make unrelated individuals look more or less alike as they age. Behavior and expression matter more than most people realize. Humans mirror each other in social groups. We adopt expressions, habitual squints, smiles, a habitual tilt of the head, even gestures. Over time, those repeated muscular patterns leave microstructural traces. Deeper smile lines, forehead furrows, or cheek dimples. Two strangers who share similar emotional patterns, work environments, or cultural norms may develop similar expression habits that increase perceived resemblance. Perception science gives us another layer. Our brains are pattern detectors and sometimes overstate similarity because of salient features. If two people share a distinctive trait, a high forehead, a heavy brow, or a similar haircut, observers fixate on that trait and mentally align other features. In psychology, that's called feature weighting. Our brain takes a cognitive shortcut, essentially saying, this key feature matches, so the rest must match too. This holistic processing can create a powerful illusion of identity, where only partial similarity exists. People don't average every facial metric equally. We overweight a few diagnostic cues and underweight others, which amplifies a sense of likeness. Let's look at some real-world examples and studies. Famous viral photos of non-related doppelgangers often show how hair, clothing, and posture create a convincing match. Scientific approaches have quantified facial similarity using metrics derived from facial landmarking and machine learning. Several research teams have used large photo datasets and algorithmic face embeddings to find lookalikes across populations. These algorithmic doppelganger hunts are powerful because they measure dozens or hundreds of geometric and texture features simultaneously. The surprising result, algorithmic matches often align with human judgments, but sometimes pick up similarities humans miss. These studies confirm that lookalikes are empirical. Anecdotes, and that similarity can be measured. Probability, again, explains why coincidences happen. If you ask millions of people to find a lookalike, you will find many, especially as modern photography and social media let images circulate globally. But probability alone does not tell the whole story. Social structure matters. Populations with historical bottlenecks, founder effects, or shared ancestry may generate high within-group facial similarity. That's why in some island or isolated communities people can look notably similar without being closely related. Another fascinating mechanism is phenocopy, a term from developmental biology. A phenocopy is when an environmental factor produces a phenotype that resembles the effect of a genetic variant. For example, nutritional deficiency in early life can flatten cheekbones or change jaw proportions in ways that resemble genetically influenced facial forms. So two people with different genes can converge on similar appearance because of similar environmental histories. Cultural practices amplify resemblance. Hairstyles, clothing, cosmetic choices, and even hair removal practices standardize local appearance. In places with strong sartorial or grooming norms, members often look more alike. Similarly, occupational effects, think of fishermen with sun-creased faces versus office workers with different exposure, create group-level facial patterns. Those shared environments increase the chance that two unrelated people will look similar. Now let's address a different question. How much does facial similarity predict anything about behavior, personality, or kinship? Short answer, not much beyond core signals. Although people sometimes assume that lookalikes share traits, rigorous studies show that perceived similarity is a poor predictor of personality or ability. Looking like someone doesn't give you their memory, skills, or temperament. However, perceived similarity can have social consequences. People tend to trust and favor those who look like them or like known figures, a cognitive bias with real-world impact. What about the darker side? Errors in facial recognition and law enforcement. As facial recognition software spreads, the risk of mistaken identity and misclassification becomes real. Algorithms that match faces must be used with care because lookalikes can cause false positives. That's why responsible use of biometric systems requires human oversight and multiple corroborating forms of evidence. Let's finish with a few practical takeaways for viewers. First, resemblance is usually a combination of genes, developmental history, environment, and behavior, not a single cause. Second, small repeated behaviors shape appearance over time. Posture, expression habits, and lifestyle have real effects. Third, when you notice a doppelganger, it's a chance to appreciate human variation and the deep interplay of biology and culture, but avoid over-interpreting resemblance as genetic destiny. Finally, if you are curious about your own family history, remember that facial similarity can hint at relationships but is no substitute for genetic testing or robust genealogical research. In closing, the doppelganger phenomenon reveals something beautiful about humanity. Within the massive diversity of faces, patterns and coincidences will emerge. Sometimes those coincidences look like mirrors. We are both products of our biology and the choices we make in life. And the the faces we see around us are the living record of that complex interplay. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, subscribe for more evidence-first explanations about the science of humans, behavior, and genetics.